I am Brenda Michelle. I'm a lymphatic massage therapist, as I say, or a licensed massage therapist specializing in lymphatic work. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. We all have our own individual journeys that have led us here. And I want to take just one collective breath to recognize that we all are converging at this moment together. So a nice deep breath in, and exhaling out, pushing the navel to the spine, really expelling all of that air, settling in. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey and why I've come here today. I'm going to cover some key concepts of the lymphatic system, and then we're going to go into what I call DIYML, or do-it-yourself manual lymphatic drainage. So my journey with lymphatic work actually started about 13 years ago when I was originally taking my massage therapy school. My teacher told our class that if you ever see a manual lymphatic drainage class, to take it, because no one in our area is doing the work and everybody needs it. Those words really stuck with me, and about 3 years after I graduated massage school, I had my opportunity to take my first lymphatic drainage class. I was blown away by what I learned. The technique itself was so light and superficial, but the results were undeniable. And we'll go a little bit into the results. After that first class, I began implementing the techniques and concepts into client sessions, as well as my own personal self-care. I noticed that in clients as well as in myself, when there were areas of pain, there was also an association of fluid backup, of an imbalance of fluid in the tissues. So instead of using the traditional Swedish techniques I had learned, or the deep tissue release I had been practicing, I implemented the new lymphatic drainage techniques that I had learned. I was surprised to find that in my own self, and the great majority of my clients, that they actually had more relief from these really light lymphatic drainage techniques than they did the deeper work that I had been practicing. Personally, I was using lymphatic work every day. I was doing it when I woke up, after the shower, before I went to bed at night. And not long after my lymphatic drainage class, I was in a car accident that resulted in whiplash. I found every time that my neck hurt, it was puffy. There was fluid retaining there. So every time I felt that pain, I would use these lymphatic drainage techniques, and within minutes, I would have a reduction or elimination of my pain. So my next step was to teach my clients the work that I was doing so they could replicate it on themselves at home. I started out with the lymphatic key concepts, and then we also went into the actual technique itself. My clients were coming back saying they had less pain between sessions. Some clients said they had no more headaches or migraines, or reduction of their headaches and migraines, noticeably less swelling and fluid retention, more restful sleep. And the best aspect to me was how empowered my clients were coming back. That they were telling me, oh, I just met with my sister and I shared these concepts with her and it's helping her as well. That people were coming back saying, oh, I'm practicing this work on myself every day and I'm noticing less pain. For those of us who have chronic injury or chronic illness, the empowerment of being able to shift our own pain with our own hands is invaluable. So often we have to reach for a pill bottle, we have to ask for advice, we have to complete physical therapy or whatever that looks like. So to know that we can do something with our own hands, that we can take with us everywhere, can be really life-changing for people. Today, I'm excited to be here to share with you what I've learned and what I believe to be a functional approach to the lymphatic system. I had a medical doctor on my table a couple years into this lymphatic work who told me after 45 minutes she had a more functional understanding of the lymphatic system than she did through all of her EMT and MD training, which was both shocking and kind of flattering. It's like, why don't you know? And then also I'm glad I was able to convey it in a way that was so understandable. What she shared with me is that they learned the definition of the lymphatic system. They didn't really truly learn how it functioned or how to shift it. I took a poll before I did this class and asked people, how often do you do lymphatic self-care? About half of the people came back and said they do lymphatic self-care every day, which is awesome. I wish my clients had those kind of stats. About a third of people say that they do the exercises weekly, meaning the self-care. And then 10% of people said they've never done lymphatic self-care. So I'm excited for just then how life-changing this could be for those people. And hopefully to clarify some things, I have clients that will come to me and say, oh, I was doing this exercise after physical therapy, but I didn't understand why. And I think it's so important and crucial that we understand the why of what we're doing. I have nothing to disclose. All right, I'm going to read from here. All right, so lymphatic key concepts. The lymphatic system is a network of structures throughout the body that works to carry out waste, proteins, and fats. The main drain, or what I like to call the bathtub drain, is located up by the clavicle. So we have these secondary kind of hubs where lymph collects before it makes its way up to here. We have one here, a collection of lymph nodes we call the axillary lymph nodes, or in the armpit, both sides. And then we have a second one here around the hip, the inguinal lymph nodes. So as we contract our muscles and move through our life, we're scooching this fluid through these systems and networks, eventually all to come to this point. So because this is the main drain and these associated hubs are kind of where lymph collects before coming here, these are the most likely areas I see backed up. I see a lot of people with fluid at the neck, with fluid in their armpits, and fluid at the hips. With muscular contraction and gravity, as I was saying, we work to move lymph toward these drains. We have something called the watershed, or essentially dividing lines or seams of the lymphatic system. The watersheds are right down the middle of the body and just around or underneath the belly button, depending on your source. So from there, the lymph likes to move the other way from the watershed. So from here, it moves up and out to this drain. And from this watershed here, it moves down to this drain here at the top of the hips. So to illustrate and give an example, I often see clients who've had a C-section, where they'll have all these lymphatics, this musculature has been severed. And then what I'll see is this fluid starts to overlap on top of that surgical scar because it knows it's supposed to drain down. So understanding that something like a surgical scar can impede the lymph. Also, something like a ponytail on your wrist or your ankle socks being too tight can impede your lymphatic flow. If it's having that red mark after you take off whatever your clothing is or your ponytail, it's a good sign that your lymph is being impeded. Another aspect that I like to touch base with is the bra. For people that wear a bra, I know not everyone feels they have a choice, but understanding that the bra essentially cuts off the lymphatic system in every direction. So wearing a bra that's a little looser than you think you need, switching up the bra so you're not wearing always the same bra that's cutting into the same parts of your tissue can be helpful to shift that lymphatic flow. The lymphatic system is supported through consistent hydration, movement, breath, meditation. The last presenter touched on that. The lymphatic system actually prefers to work when we're in our parasympathetic, when we're in our rest and digest aspect of our nervous system. So incorporating breath and meditation can actually be really great lymphatic self-care. A couple options for lymphatic self-care. We talked about breath. The square breath is a really good option. Essentially, you breathe in for about 4 seconds, and you hold that breath for 4 seconds. And then you exhale for 4 seconds, really tucking the navel to the spine, and then you hold that exhale. And in this way, we work to pump our abdomen, specifically the structure called the thoracic duct that travels through our abdomen, carrying up to 70% of our lymph to this site here. The buff to dry technique is what I do every time after I get out of my shower. I encourage my clients to punctuate your day with lymphatic work, so you're not trying to make it up at the end of the day. So after I get out of my shower, I'll take a hand towel or a little hair towel, and I'll essentially buff myself dry. Instead of going back and forth as I usually would have, I'll essentially work to shift the fluid and to dry my skin in the way I know that the fluid wants to drain. I'll put my foot up on a little stool, And then I'll do the same with my leg, encouraging the fluid at the top of the leg first, and then incorporating more from there. The audible sigh out can be really helpful also to vibrate that thoracic duct. It helps to bring us deeper into that parasympathetic nervous system. Rebounders, I know a lot of people are using those, essentially a little trampoline. But I always like to check with people that if you're using that little rebounder, if it's possible to elevate your arms, so then you're working with the forces of gravity. I have way too many clients coming in saying, I've been told to use the rebounder, but they're not elevating their arms. Or the vibration plates. Some of my clients were coming in saying, oh, my wrists are really swollen after the vibration plates. And I'm like, well, can we do your wrists up? So essentially working with what we know to be those forces that support gravity. Bounce, jiggle, rock, and dance. Too many of my clients are coming in hating their physical activity. I think it's so crucial that we're enjoying our physical activity, that we're existing in a state of joy. So I say get a playlist of 20 minutes for songs that you like to dance to. I like to lay down and elevate my arms and legs if you're able, and then dance as if you're standing up. So you'll be lying down with your arms and legs up, looking kind of like a crazy bug on the floor, but essentially it allows all that lymph to come back to these main drain sites. A warm foot bath can be really helpful. Not everyone has access or is able to get in a bathtub. So a warm foot bath can be really therapeutic. Adding Epsom salt can help with magnesium absorption if that's something you're after. Deep belly breaths we talked about. Dry brushing I'm just going to touch on really briefly. I have an unpopular opinion about dry brushing. Almost every dry brush I've ever met I feel is too coarse and too hard. And for people who have lymphatic conditions where they have lymph backed up, or those dealing with lipedema or Dercums where their lymphatic response might be slower due to the circumstances of their condition. My thought is when we're taking a dry brush, repeatedly brushing our skin, what's happening, especially with these really hard bristles, is we're creating thousands of little microabrasions on our skin. And a lot of these brushes are natural fibers like wood, and those fibers are more likely to hold things like mold. So I think it's really important if we are doing dry brushing that we're doing it the appropriate order, and that we're also making sure our dry brush is really clean and sanitized properly. So moving into the DIYML Basics, we'll begin at the end. And what I mean by saying that is we always want to start where the fluid ends. I have clients that come to see me with lymphedema in one arm after breast cancer, for example. And what I find is that oftentimes it's this drain that's backed up. I could work on the wrist all day, but if this is backed up, everything else is going to be backed up. So we always start here, we come back here, and we end here. We activate at the drains and then surrounding pathways. So the idea is if the wrist is really swollen, again, we don't want to start there. So we activate what we know to be where that fluid is draining, and then we'll slowly activate the fluid around it. The verbiage I use is set, stretch, release. So the idea is that we're setting into that superficial lymphatic system. We're stretching those nodes so gently toward what we know to be the drain. So we know the arm drains this way. So when we do the arm, we're always going to go toward the drain. And then when I release, I provide just a little bit of snap back. That flick back is what I'm really going for when I do lymphatic work. It takes the pressure off those lymph nodes to where the fluid can more readily jump to the next node, in my experience. So using a full hand and a slow pace, what I see people do with lymphatic work is they'll do these kind of pointy finger situation. It's pokey. You really want to do this nice broad stroke because then you're getting more tissues. You're pinning all of that tissue in. And a slow pace. The lymphatic system appreciates the slow pace. It functions at a slower pace. And when we meet the system where it's at, it responds more readily. So what I say is 12 pumps on each side, twice. So I don't count my own lymphatic work. I don't count it when I do it on my client, but I feel like when people are brand new at something, it's helpful to have a goal to shoot for. So what I say is 12 pumps on each side, twice. So you can do all 24 pumps at once, but I find that the lymph is less responsive if you work continuously in one area. So I'll do my 12 pumps here, I'll come here to do my 12, and then I'll revisit for the other. Incorporating full belly breaths as I go, kind of working that pump. Okay, So we're all going to do this together now. And I wear a top under this that's, oh, I can't take my mic off. There we go. Excuse me. So I can give you guys an example. So we're aiming for the space just inside the clavicle. It's kind of recessed there. You'll feel it. So I'm going to start on this side to avoid my microphone. Okay. So cupping the hand at the top of the shoulder with the heel resting at the drain site, which we know to be just inside the clavicle here. Pumping toward the clavicle, 12 pumps on each side twice. So what we're doing here is we're pinning this tissue, watching my elbow here. I'm bringing my elbow down and forward, and then I'm providing this moment of release. So we'll go about 12 pumps. You can count in your head if you want. So essentially reminding ourselves that we're not just doing this fingertip flicky situation, we're doing a nice full hand with a slow pace. So pin, and then we can stretch it, or as I say, set, stretch, release. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. There is no one right way, in my opinion. So understanding we can work here, we can work down. Essentially what we're doing is we're wringing out the tissue to where we know to be the drain and pumping it. So now coming to the other side, I'm going to air pump so I don't mess my microphone up. So bringing this to the side. From here, we go into the neck. So if someone comes in for any lymphatic work, we always start here. Even if it's their foot, neck is second in my book. So for the neck, you can do one side at a time, or you can do both sides at once. So we're going to do both sides for time's sake. So what I'm doing here is I'm wrapping my fingertips to meet at the spine. I'm pinning my fingers in just gently, and I'm stretching that tissue straight down. So it's going to feel like way less movement than we did on our shoulders. It's going to be about ½ an inch or maybe a whole inch. What we want to be careful of is that we're not bringing this fluid forward. It's always going down toward this site. So set, stretch, release, providing this pumping. You'll see me at the grocery store line doing this. Really? Because it's so simple and we can do it all the time.
10 pumps or less?
So you can do 10 pumps or less, sounds good. You can do 12 pumps on each side twice. So after the neck, we're going to revisit the clavicle. Always almost like kneading dough. You're going to invite a little more flour in, and you just keep pulling that in. So back to the clavicle with our pumps, we're going to revisit. So that's about 4 to 6 pumps. Just a little bit. We want to make sure the fluid is still moving as we're incorporating new fluid. To the other side. And now we're going to shoot for the base of the skull here. So before we get there, though, we want to revisit the neck a little. So we'll do another 4 pumps or so on the neck, just encouraging that fluid to keep going. And then we'll get our fingertips and work them in the base of the scalp here. And essentially what we're doing is curling the fingertips in a pumping motion. I have a lot of clients who have a whole ridge of fluid here on their suboccipital ridge. Many of them with the headaches and the migraines and all of that. So when we open these pathways, we can shift this fluid here. And more recent research has revealed that the lymphatic system, the brain's lymphatic system, drains to these superior cervical lymph nodes here. So when we open these pathways, it helps our brain to drain more thoroughly as well. And now we're going to revisit the clavicle here. So from there, we can go to different places. So if someone comes in and they have headaches or they have a lot of fluid on their face, then I would incorporate going into the face. But if someone's coming in and they have lymphedema in their arm, then I would go to the axillary drain, slowly incorporating more fluid as I go. But the base concepts of understanding that all the fluid is essentially working its way to here to be reintroduced to the heart. Some of it is excreted. Those with liver, kidney, and heart conditions need to be careful when they're doing lymphatic work because those systems are the ones that receive that fluid and the waste products, and also those receiving chemotherapy because it can actually move it out of the body faster. In conclusion, that's all I have to share. If you have any questions, I'm going to be around the rest of the day. I also have handouts that I'm going to leave on the back table for recap for those of you watching online and across the world. If you want to send me an email, I'll be happy to send you that handout as well. Thank you.